actually, you know what? We've done Neuro stuff before. I am kind of curious about this. I assume this is a channel that just, like, documents Swarm stuff. Yes, that's exactly what this is. Okay, perfect. Sure, let's check this one out.
One of Neuro's qualities as a streamer is to play.
Why have we got... Why are subtitles on? Why are there French... What the fuck are there French subtitles on? Why did it do that?
Play games on stream. I mean, okay, you don't have to play games to count as a streamer, but that is one of Neuro's capabilities. You've likely seen her play games during solo chill streams. I mean, here she is playing Inscription, and here she is playing Plague Inc. These are games that she...
Well, the one that everyone remembers early on was the OC streams. The OC streams and then the Minecraft streams.
Integrated into, as it's called, since she can control what she does in those games directly. But what you may not know is that some of the integrations you may have seen her use aren't made by Vettel. They also aren't made by Alex, who is his programmer friend that helped with many of the early integrations such as Liar's Bar, Buckshot Roulette, and Inscription. At the time of writing, around half of the integrations seen on stream, Cookie Clicker, Outer Wilds, Plague Inc., VS Code, and Don't Starve, have been made by Swarm members and posted to the public projects channel on Neurocore.
Oh!
But you may be wondering how. After all, we don't get to see Neuro's source code.
Does Vtuber have some sort of, like, public API documentation? I would assume so.
How is it that the community can make integrations despite not knowing how she works internally, or having a copy of Neuro? Today, I'll be giving you the rundown of the Neuro API, how this all works, give some examples, and also talk about the effort put behind keeping things smoothly running. And if you don't know who I am, I'm K-Train.
Hi,
I
K-Train.
write code for many different projects, including these projects that use the API.
Oh!
Whenever I can, I also help with other people making their own integrations, giving them some tips on how they can use certain techniques. Either way, I think I'm qualified enough to give you a rundown on it. Okay, introduction done. Let's go. The protocol starts with the time when Neuro played Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. For this integration, Vettel and Alex created a protocol specific to the integration that makes sense to the game, with different commands taking names after the various things she can do in the game, such as lifeline/phone a friend. The integration worked out pretty great, but once this protocol was then applied to other games, it was pretty easy to see that the millionaire-specific commands wouldn't be applicable to other games.
Sure.
Well, who would have thought? And it would be pretty tiresome for Vettel to have to create a new set of commands per game and translate that into something Neuro can interpret and understand.
Source code what you add after making
This led
spaghetti
Vettel and
code.
Alex to co-create
That's a good
generic
one.
specification for Neuro to be able to interact with any integration, without the need for custom commands for each integration. In the end, docs of the specs were stored in an at the time private repo called Neuro Game SDK. All integrations going forward would also, presumably, be written to utilize the spec. The Neuro API was officially publicized right before the second Neuro-sama Game Jam. It continues to be available on GitHub today with relatively little changes. The community has built many integrations even since the Game Jam, with many people building amazing integrations such as Stardew Valley, Played Up, Pokemon Showdown, The Farmer was replaced, Fallout New Vegas, and more being posted every month in the Neurocore project's form.
Honestly, it's really cool to have, like, a developer community who is going to be building these integrations, because obviously it's very time-consuming to do, and I'm sure Vtuber has a lot of other things that he needs to work on to make Neuro function as well as she does. No, Neuro's not open source. The SDK is. Neuro's definitely not open source. No.
With the history done with, let's understand how it works. Neuro does not see games the same way humans do. While she has vision, this is not part of the Neuro API, and vision can be toggled independently from the API. This means that Neuro does not see the UI of a game like we as humans normally do, like health bars, buttons, or scenery. Instead, text packets are sent back and forth between Neuro and the integration, meaning that she can be sent more or less information than what we see. It also means she may be receiving incorrect or incomplete information. But with that said, there is a list of packets that are sent to or from Neuro when we use the Neuro API. This is represented using JSON, which is a computer-friendly data format commonly used for information transfer over the internet.
I remember where a long time, early on in the AI stuff, I don't know if people are still arguing about it, but early on people were arguing that like JSON is a bad format for AI stuff because it's additional extra tokens you need to sort through. I don't know if people have like a format they've settled on at this point. I don't know, but it was something that it was definitely a common argument. But I'm not sure specifically how the data is being handled by Neuro. Considering it's going through the SDK, I assume it is formatted by the SDK into a format that is best suited for handling Neuro anyway.
After startup initialization is complete, actions can be registered/unregistered to Neuro. And Neuro can choose to execute actions at any time once registered.
Easier. Everything has a parser.
A result will be sent back. This result needs to be sent back as soon as possible, as in, the only delay should be late. The game can also force an action from Neuro, which will then require Neuro to send an action as soon as possible. The game can also send information to Neuro at any time with a context packet. All of this happens over WebSocket, which is a protocol that allows bi-directional communication between a client and a server. And that is the somewhat high-level overview of the API protocol.
Wow, hearing that it's fucking JSON and WebSockets, like, so many projects try to overcomplicate things. Fucking JSON and WebSockets, it just works. Don't worry about it. Inside joke, visualize latency. I see.
Anyways, the Neuro API is very well suited for turn-based card games or visual novels, since those can easily be translated into text to send to Neuro, and do not require complex real-time elements. There have been attempts to allow more real-time games for Neuro, but this is very much stretching the API protocol, so they are a challenge to integrate well, with most integrations for real-time games requiring some abstraction. Why don't I give an example of each type of integration that we have? Before we do though, let's define these categories. They aren't officially defined or even agreed upon categories, but these best fit the different types of integrations we have so far, so we'll stick with this. Autonomous integrations, which will be defined as games that Neuro controls by herself. Integrations for these games are usually turn-based games or visual novels, since, as mentioned above, they are perfect for Neuro to play on.
Also, if there is some latency with a turn-based game, it's not as big of a deal because you can like delay stuff perfectly fine.
Game integrations, which will be defined as games that Neuro and Vettel can play together. Integrations in here are usually integrations that are way too complex for Neuro to play alone, and usually, but not always, have some other element that Neuro can control instead while Vettel plays. Tool integrations, which will be defined as integrations for programs that aren't games. Integrations in this category have a higher content ceiling but have less structure, and autonomy using these integrations are hard to do. Some of these categories can be combined with each other, and some integrations even fall into multiple categories, but these are the clear-cut categories we are working with. And that may or may not be too complicated, but this is actually really simple. I'll give the examples for each category type so you can visualize how it's working behind the scenes. Bellatra is a roguelike card game where you stack multipliers by comboing multiple cards together, resulting in higher damage multipliers and more pokers. I won't explain the entire game to you here, since that isn't necessary, but what I will say is that this is a very good example of a game that fits to the Neuro API's strengths. So, let's break down the integration.
I was not a massive... I like Bellatra, but like, I was not as big of a fan as a lot of other people.
Uses here. When the game boots and the integration connects, the initial context tells Neuro what the game is and how to play. During her turn, the game registers actions for playing cards or discarding her hand. She can also choose/skip cards in booster packs, reorder jokers, use consumables, see deck info and hand levels, and the other stuff. Pretty much all of the above use action force packets, so Neuro is required to respond in a timely fashion. Bellatra is programmed in Lua, so it is quite easy to redefine functions on the fly, which they then use so that Neuro can click the buttons. This meant the mod was pretty easily doable, since you don't have to spend half your life figuring out how to detect when a certain scene was loaded. The only problem that this runs into is a pretty persistent issue: context. Balatro has a lot of cards with a ton of effects.
Right.
And especially in the later stages, this becomes a problem as you have many cards with long descriptions that need to be processed by Neuro. Additionally, the initial context needs to specify how the game works, which can be forgotten by Neuro as time goes on, or whenever she feels like it because Neuro can control what to remember. Overall, you'll see that each integration has to work around context in their own ways, even though Neuro's context window is quite large for her case. We'll touch on limitations a bit later, but for now this is likely the biggest problem for this integration given Balatro's nature. Outer Wilds is a game where you control a spaceship to travel to different planets to solve a grand mystery. Because people are pretty heavy on spoilers to this game, we'll be blurring some parts out, probably. I don't know what the editor is going to do here, of course. So, this integration is split into 3 different parts: the control part, the context part, and decoration part. We'll only be focusing on the first 2, obviously, since the third part doesn't interact with Neuro. The control part, nicknamed Neuropilot, reprograms the ship to take actions from the Neuro API. Because of this, Neuro is able to fly the ship to planets.
I'm
orbit,
sure that
or
goes
otherwise
very
take
well.
off. She even has a command for ejecting and crashing the ship. Okay, what were the modders having? And can I have some of that? Anyways, because controlling the ship isn't very turn-based, Neuro's actions have to go through something like an interpreter. For example, Neuro can tell the integration to land the ship, which it then responds by telling her that the ship will be landed. Importantly, she doesn't get told immediately if it was successful or not, since the ship has to undergo the actual landing process, which will take a while and therefore stall Neuro, but eventually the integration will send a context packet telling her if it landed successfully. This technique of sending her a results packet first before the actual results come in via a context packet later is done pretty often across all integrations, considering the requirement of returning a result as soon as possible. The context part, named Neuroscope, gives Neuro context about the ship status and the surroundings of the player. This mod
So I guess the idea is you want to have Neuro knowing that something is happening, rather than creating a situation where you start the action and then she doesn't know until the result occurs, because that could create some weird, like, resetting of actions, I presume.
To get the ship status and logs, as well as giving her a ping when something interesting happened like dialogue or Vettel dying. It even told her how well Vettel cooked his marshmallows. Cute! Now, funnily enough, context wasn't an actual issue with this game. Since the integration wasn't meant for solo Neuro, context management wasn't as big of an issue here. The real issue was actually getting the mod working in the first place. On the first day, there was an issue with the mods. Well, there were multiple actually, but there's one that's significant here. Which led to us discovering that Neuro server couldn't properly handle multiple integrations. On the first couple days of the Outer Wilds playthrough, the control and context parts were actually separate mods, which each established their own current connections to Neuro. It was then found out that while Neuro could receive context from multiple connections, she could only execute actions from one connection at a time. This eventually led to the combining of the 2 mods, so the issue would be sidestepped. Also, the decoration part later on being added to the mod instead of being its own thing because there was only one mod now. For the non-programmers out there, Visual Studio Code is a text editor that programmers use for writing code. VS Code has a powerful extension system and allows you to install extensions for different programming languages, so it can be used to allow Neuro or Evil to write code.
Just give them free reign over the text file, just see what happens.
Almost any programming language. On stream, they have been seen using JavaScript, Python, SVG, HTML, and CSS. Despite the Neuro API originally being meant for allowing Neuro-sama to play games, and is still geared towards that to this day, there's nothing stopping it from allowing Neuro to use any type of program, and that's exactly what the developers of this integration have done here. This integration has 2 modes for each action. The first mode, called Copilot mode, allows Vettel to receive a request on what Neuro is wanting to do with that action. In this mode, Neuro's attempts to use the action will be delayed until a request is accepted.
That's cool.
The second mode, called Autopilot mode, would give Neuro the ability to execute the action without a programmer present at all.
Once an AI is capable of patching and developing itself, what's next? Well, we're already in that situation. It just writes bad code. We already have autonomous agents. Like, that's already a thing. It's just very quickly they start writing gibberish. And you start getting a code base that doesn't compile. I believe, didn't Anthropic do a test writing a browser like that? I feel like that happened. It might not have been Anthropic. It might have been another one of these companies. I mean, once it's able to successfully do it. Give up. I don't have an answer for you. This is a problem that nobody has really properly considered to its end state, so I don't know. I do not know.
While these are customizable at the user's wish, on stream the modes have been divided up such that editing file contents are set to autopilot and creating, moving, and deleting files are set to copilot.
Right.
The
Otherwise,
main
she'd
issues
nuke
with
the
this
computer.
integration specifically, well, at least in terms of protocol usage, are that 1. It can't express everything over the protocol. Some things that may be important for Neuro to know can't be expressed well without getting Neuro to try running it first, leading to potentially suboptimal decisions. 2.
Context size is a problem, especially with larger workspaces, as if configured incorrectly, Neuro can accidentally cause a problem to herself.
Neuro wants to open the file assets, scripts, bosses, boss.cs. Okay.
Okay. Oh.
Someone tell Vito there is a problem with my AI.
Yeah, that's not great.
Additionally, she can get an extremely variable amount of context per action execution, and they can clog up her context window, her short-term memory, pretty quickly if she isn't smart with her action strategy.
Right, so we have awesome integrations, and it's somewhat smooth sailing, so we should be good, right?
Sure.
Right. Well, there are actually some issues that come
Look
up
who it
when
is! Haven't seen her in a bit. Fillion is truly lost.
Integration theory meets neuro reality. God,
Filtered.
Neuro, you're always trying to make us devs suffer, don't you?
This list is not exhaustive and more may come up, but they are
We
the
don't
most
know.
common issues across multiple integrations, and it's something that can't be directly solved by integrations themselves, though there are ways to help. 1. Context management. This is far and away the biggest issue with integrations in general, but mostly with autonomous game and tool integrations. This could even be its own segment to explain the issues with context management, but to keep it short, Neuro and Evil can't remember absolutely everything, and they aren't exactly the best at remembering instructions. They themselves are in charge of choosing what to remember, so they don't always get it right, and whilst developers can just tell her, this is important to remember, this does not fully solve the issue. In particular, this now requires the twins to make arbitrary value judgments for every important context. 2. Communication.
They just say
Neuro
fuck
likely
it.
won't understand what you are sending her, at least not in the same way as you think. And so context meant to be interpreted one way could actually be interpreted another way by Neuro.
It's possible to test prompts using ChatGPT or Claude, but they aren't the same as Neuro, and so it may still be misinterpreted.
Still better than guessing though. 3. Spatial awareness. Some games may require Neuro to be aware of her in-game surroundings. This, however, isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. As everything is described entirely using text, you have to strongly convey spacing to Neuro, which is pretty hard to do without also bogging her down with context.
In something where you have like a grid, like let's say you're playing a tactics game, that would be much easier. If you're playing a game like a Minecraft, for example, where you have something walking towards you, have fun. have fun with that.
Fast reaction. The Neuro API expects that games will not require a response immediately from Neuro. This means that some games can only work with Neuro as a side character, and even more just cannot be integrated with her at all. This isn't something that can be fixed. It's an inherent problem with designing an API that uses network communications like this.
There are, obviously, other limitations that we have to be aware of, but that's part of the fun sometimes. Not all games would work, so how far could we make a game work?
Now, so far, we've outlined the protocol itself, but re-implementing the communication code
Early
and
Neuro
testing
digging
the
the lava,
protocol
yeah.
would be extra hard without the proper tooling. And so, there are many tools to help build and test integrations. For starters, there's an SDK for different programming languages and game engines. An SDK, or Software Development Kit, is a library designed to help develop an app with a bundle of reusable code. In our case, SDKs help validate and perform communication with the Neuro API. These SDKs simplify and abstract communicating with Neuro in your favorite programming language, and there are both official SDKs.
What do we got here? Rust, JavaScript, TypeScript, Java, Lua, GameMaker, C, Python, Kotlin, C++, generic C#, RenPy. Okay.
And community SDKs. For example, all SDKs handle connection and communication with Neuro, and SDKs for some game engines have action windows that allows the dev to specify a window in which an action may be valid for, which is particularly helpful for action forces, and some even have SDKs for simulator servers. Speaking of, there's also different simulators designed to mimic the Neuro API server so developers can test their integrations. As of writing, there's currently 4 different simulators.
Randy, full name random.range, the oldest and therefore simplest of the bunch. He generates a response using random values according to the schema, and only responds if he is forced to.
Huh. Okay, so that actually makes sense. So like having an SDK there, right? Like obviously you can make something, but you wouldn't be able to really test it until it's live. But I guess yeah, if you have like a framework that just like hits it with random responses, you could probably get most of the way there.
The spiritual successor of Randy and definitely not the one controlling Neuro. Tony has the UI to allow the user to manually send actions, as well as toggling Randy's behavior of random but compliant responses upon being forced to take an action. Jeopardy, the Randy for AI-based servers. It contacts a remote LLM provider to generate responses, OpenAI by default, allowing the server to be more intelligent. AI-based servers also have an advantage in that you can test your prompts to ensure that it's not worded in a confusing way. Gary, a more advanced AI-based server that, in addition to Randy's random responses and Tony's manual selection capabilities, also has the ability to spin up a local LLM on the user's machine. If the user's computer is not good enough, Gary can connect to a remote LLM provider, but it is not officially supported by Gary's creator and has slightly less capabilities if so. In short, there's a lot of tooling around the Neuro API, and this really helps us devs to create integrations.
This is crazy having this much of a dev community around the streamer. Like, actually fucking wild.
Without reinventing the wheel 1,000 times. Now, if you want to see Neuro playing a specific game, and you are dedicated enough, then you too
Jeopardy,
can go and help
Primo
out.
Jam Enjoyer,
It is always fun to
absolutely.
have more capabilities for the twins, and playing games or interacting with programs is definitely something you can help make happen. All community integrations used on stream are open source, and some official integrations are open source as well, so there's lots of reference material. The specification is always on GitHub as well if you need to reference, and if you're not sure, you can always ask in the dedicated Neuro SDK project discussion thread on NeuroCode. We hope to see program integrations for Neuro and Evil to use. Thank you to everyone who helped provide some info on how the integrations worked for this video, namely Locked for the Balatro integration and Dialing Spoon for the Outer Wilds.
That was cool. I had no idea how Neuro game integration was working. But thank you for sending that one my way. I learned something. I'm not going to go and write something for Neuro, but now I know how things are.